Okay, I think it's live now.
Pretty cool.
Okay, here we go. So it looks like we're live on YouTube. Okay, so I'll go ahead and so everybody out in the YouTube world, thank you for joining us. Let me see. Hold on. I want to give if anyone's there a chance. Okay, so yeah, just thank you for joining us. The chat's going to be open. If anyone has questions, comments, concerns, I'll uh I'll relay them over to Maria. So we're just gonna go ahead and get started with our conversation. But by all means, like I said, thank you all for joining us. This is the 100th episode of the podcast, and I'm grateful to be sharing it with Maria. It's it's been an amazing journey, and I'm thrilled, excited. So again, the chat's gonna be open, and I'll go ahead and we'll just get it going. So thank you all for whoever's tuning in.
All righty.
So
Thank you, Omar.
yeah, thank you. How are you doing?
I'm doing good. I'm glad to be here with you. I know I was even thinking to myself too, like, oh gosh, what are we going to talk about? And I thought, once we get into conversation, it's like it's almost impossible to stop. So we'll just enjoy it, have a good time, see what comes. But I'm really glad to be here. I think it's important to have these avenues for conversation and to begin to, have a safe place to explore some really cool stuff that otherwise we wouldn't.
Absolutely. I mean, there was a topic I had, but it's a little heavier, so I'll wait for a little bit. I'll talk about it.
Hey, I'm like, no reason to wait. I'm like, let's dive right in. Like that's oftentimes where like it gets to be really good, right? Where we just go straight for it and just see what comes.
Yeah. Well, I'll start with this little like happy one then. The other day it was funny because all throughout this eclipse, when did I talk to you last? Was it after the last eclipse? I think
It
it was
was right
after the
after
eclipse.
last eclipse. So it was about 2 Sundays ago, as a matter of fact.
Okay. So, I was seeing all these things of new beginnings, right? I went to nature. There was like the geese with their little flocks, and it was like five. So, five is a number of change. So there was all these like meanings just with the animals, right? All these new beginnings, new birth, right? Stuff like that. I even had a friend that sent me a picture. They're like, look at the parking space that I landed on. It was like 111, right? Which is also a new beginnings type thing. But the other day, it was funny. I was at a place and I was walking and this man just comes out of like the trees and everything. And it was like he was like, "Oh, he saw I had my camera, so he was like, 'How good is your zoom?' I was like, 'It's good.'" And then he's like, "Oh, come here." He's like, "Look at," and he showed me that there was three little owls in a tree. So I was like, "Oh, wow." I was like, "Oh, wow, your phone has good zoom," and then I guess his wife was walking. He's like, "I'll catch up to her," you know. So he went out of his way to like, he let his wife go, and we went all the way in there. There was a eucalyptus tree with three baby owls. Then there was the mom, and then there was the dad in another tree, right? So I got to see all of them. I made a little video I put on the I think on the YouTube Shorts, right?
And
But
that's
he,
important to talk about here for a second too, because like in that moment, and for I don't know who may be watching or who watches the replay of this, but those kinds of things are super important. Those things aren't so random. So like some random guy coming out of the trees to come and show you owls inside of a tree, right? If that those are moments that are important. Those are like signs. Those are moments where the universe intervenes, like sends somebody to you. And then when we really talk about animal energy, that anything that comes across our path that catches our attention, especially with like animal spirits. And I see a
Mm,
lot of your videos. You do a lot of different videos about animal energy and animal spirits and animal totems. And I think it's super important that when an animal does come across our path, that we do recognize that there's an exchange of information. That the universe is actually speaking to us, sending us a guidance, a message. And in that moment, the man was like one of these, what I would call an earth angel moment. It's like we don't know why, so random. It's just a person, but out of the blue would behave normally, do something differently, get you to think about something differently or get your attention for something. That's a moment of intervention. And then with all of the owls, that you saw. And so I'm wondering, like, the difference between, what you saw with them in the tree and then the father and the other one. So, yeah.
No, absolutely. Well, there was even past that, like, the man even showed me. He's, oh, look at, he had buried him, so he even showed me, like, this little secret thing he uncovered for me, and it was like the skulls of, like, the rats that they had, or the animals that they were eating, right? That they were eating, even the babies, right? And so he's like, oh, I don't know if you. I was like, oh yeah, I know. Like, I've studied, like, because they came to me before, the owls and everything, right? So
Mhm.
owls, for those that don't know, when they'll eat and what they can't basically poop out, right? They regurgitate. So there's these balls of feather, and when you open up all the fur and the feathers and stuff of the whatever prey they ate, you could see all the bones, right? Like, all the bones are still in there. So it was interesting. Like, he's all showing me and stuff, and it was cool. So even that, right? Like, how do you think about that spiritually? Like, we take in. So I felt like, even that, right? The fact that I even did this little ceremony of, like, kind of releasing. It's been a beautiful 99 episodes that I did,
Mhm.
but symbolizing that, like releasing that energy, right? Making sure all the things that, because I do every time I've interviewed someone, I've taken on that energy, right? I get drawn into these conversations. It hasn't always been conversations I've wanted to get into specifically, right? But hey, I'm here. I provide the
The
space for it.
platform.
Yeah, the
Hmm.
platform, the space. So, it is what it is. So even that, just feeling like, oh wow, 99, 9 is a number of endings, right? So even that, right? Like, the owl is the epitome of that, right? They take in the nutrients that they need, and then they regurgitate all the stuff that they don't need, right? They leave it there, the bones, the things, so we can physically see that manifest. So that's a physical manifestation of, like, our human experience, right? Being able to travel and learn, because the owl is the epitome of wisdom. That's why in all the things, when you're little, they show the owl with the glasses and the professor's hat, or the student's hat, or whatever it is, the little, you know what I mean?
Hmm.
Like, when they show them
Oh,
the
yeah.
wise old owl. Yeah.
Yes. Uh-huh.
Even in Winnie the Pooh, right? Like, in that one, it was like the owl was the wise one, right? He lived in his tree, and so the owl represents, like, this little
Wisdom.
owls. Yeah,
Hmm.
when I seen these three little owls, like, I thought right away, like, mind, body, spirit, right? And it was
Hmm.
like they're beginning this journey. So I felt like, oh, like, here we go. I'm about to embark on a whole new, like, journey, right? Like, it
Yes.
was it was really interesting. And the mom was hidden. The mom was, like, adjacent to the like, watching everything, right? She's just watching, but she was covered. So I couldn't really, was able to get a decent picture, but she was behind the eucalyptus, right? And the dad, the same thing. He was over there hitting, like, hidden, but he was watching in the other direction. So the mom is watching one direction. So there was that vigilance, right? The mom and the dad, and
Well,
and
think
even
about
below.
all the messages that are just contained even in all of that imagery, right? So, like, when we take the time, so what we're talking about is so much more than just this, like, one simple experience, right? Of this person coming to show you these things. There's multiple messages and signs and guidance that was given to you in that whole one experience. But in order for you to have any one of them, it required that you were in a position of, first of all, being open to it and being aware, right? You are an individual, from what I know, that I know of you, and I can sense and feel within you, is that you are a seeker and that you always seek and are always observant and curious. And so those are the most fundamental things, qualities that a person must embody when they're really wanting to engage in the world of nature for receiving signs and messages, synchronicities. And so this is why being out in nature is so vital. So that when we are out there, we are actually recognizing that we are bigger than something other than just ourselves. There's an entire system, an entire energy flow that is in the universe and that is also made up into this world. And if we were to take the time and smell the roses, like they say, in this case, go for walks, look at a eucalyptus tree, have an experience with this person who's showing this, and the profound awareness of that information given. Yeah, that the wisdom of the owl takes in what they need. They take in the nourishment. But yeah, they let go of everything else that does not serve them. Now, they don't force it. They're not holding on to it, because if they were holding on to it, then they have no space for new nourishment to come in. So yeah, it's and especially after the eclipse, okay? So it's making space. So like what are we letting go of? It's so symbolic of our own inner process. And so we ourselves can mirror like these rhythms. We can learn from nature. We can learn from these other species that have and carry wisdom. And what are they trying to show us? Because it's incredible that even just in that one little message alone, and it's really vital too, it's actually appropriate from a conversation that I had with my sister earlier in the day about how we go through our own healing experiences, and that each of these experiences we take in, and we take in the wisdom of it, right? If we do it correctly in our experiences, we'll take in the wisdom of those things, leave behind the things that do not, that don't matter, the things that we're holding on to. Those are things of fear, anger, pain, frustration, resentment. When people are holding on to those things, we're not in a place to be able to be open to receiving, because we're so in our head, about the past pains, the past hurts, other situations. And so, given that example and the wisdom of the owl, take in what we need, let go of what we don't, so that they can continue. It's something really profound in that, and like you said, this vigilance of the awareness. There's the male, the father owl, and then the other two, so probably the little owlet, and the mother. So then observing their space, observing their environment, trying to be in flow. There's so much to be learned from those experiences. So yeah, for those watching who aren't familiar with a lot of the videos that you do, that like you really do, you take your walks, you stumble upon, you always show some kind of like animal or something that's come across, and there's always a message in it. And it's appropriate to what's happening in the moment. Don't you find that amazing?
No, no, yeah, and it got even deeper actually. Like,
Mhm.
because whenever the owl comes to me, it's always a time when, like, the first feather I ever found was an owl feather. Right? I went up on a hill to pray, like, I don't even know how many years ago, right? But that was like the first feather I found. Went up to this hill to pray, and I was standing on this tree trunk, and I looked down, and there's this huge feather, and I was like, and I got all excited, and I thought it was a hawk feather at first, but I got happy, and then I even took it to a powwow for them to tie it for me. But this guy was like, because natives from the north don't like that the owl because
There's a
not that
lot
they
of
don't like it, they
tradition.
respect it, but they don't really mess with owl medicine, right? To indigenous people more from Mexico and lower, like we don't really have any. We have a connection with the owl, right?
Mhm.
Um,
And it's important that you said that, because it's like really honoring the different traditions and the different understandings of those. And so owl medicine. So when an owl comes across the path. So yeah, absolutely right. So there are some traditions that look at it as like as an omen. Like if an owl comes across your path, it might be looked as upon as a negative thing. Other cultures might look at it as though it's a very positive thing. And we're just using the owl medicine as an example. This could be used in any other animal per se, but specifically the owl. So yeah, and others, they're even known in the work that I do, being a medium, working with people who have crossed over, that they really do help and guide, those in the souls, through that other process. So there's a lot to be said around. It's interesting that owl wisdom is coming up. Yeah.
Well, yeah, like the owl used to be the one that would guide me through the spirit world. When I used to go like through the astral plane, there would be an owl flying over me.
Mhm.
Sometimes I remember once I was stuck and I couldn't, it was something so simple. And I remember in the spirit world, I was like, there was this tree, right? This big old like tree trunk, and there was an owl on top of it. And there was another tree trunk connected to it. And there was all this water that was stuck, and the owl's like looking at me, and then I go, look, you just gotta let it flow. And I pull out this other piece of stick that, and then the water just starts flowing. And the owl gives me a look like, hello. And I was like, oh. And then I woke up and I was like, just let it flow. Whatever I was getting stuck in, So when the owl has appeared, like lately, I think I was focused more on like human stuff, like this 3D world stuff. So I had felt a little disconnected. I even interviewed. There was a medium I interviewed, and I guess she even said how it wasn't that I was disconnected. It was just that right now everybody was kind of feeling like, I guess she was saying she had kind of been feeling like that too, but it was just the energies. She said that the energies had been kind of muggy or something like that, right? Or something like
Well,
that.
we can even actually explain that even more. So it's a big thing what's actually happening. Like a lot of people, because so I have had the benefit of working with people all over the world, and a lot of people who are intuitives, mediums, and healers themselves. And you're absolutely right that so many people globally, it's like everybody went offline. It's
Wow.
like all of a sudden everybody went offline, and people are having to be like, I can't connect. I'm not hearing my guides. I'm not feeling it the same way.
Mm.
And so this is super, super important to like really just dive into. So we've been talking the last time that we spoke a couple of weeks ago, we started to talk about the separation of these two realities. And what I was shown and told is that with the separation of these two earths that are really energetic, right? So it's hard for someone to fully grasp and understand that we're not like, again, it will eventually appear in the material plane, meaning that suddenly you'll find yourself in a reality where those things that once were there are no longer part of that experience. It's not like, I think that when we talk about these two earths, there's a misunderstanding, like there's going to be all this like a quite literal experience of earths dividing in half. So we have to expand it a little bit more to our understanding, is that it's an energetic thing first, right?
Mm.
So everybody's trying to get a feel of where we are with these energies splitting, that the way that the energies flow, and I love that you said you remove the stick and the energies flow, right? It's another guidance for the same message of what we're stepping into. It's a new flow of energy, new flow. It's as though, imagine when we had only AM radio stations, right?
Mm.
And this new signal comes out and it's FM, right? But if you don't have the device to properly hear or connect with that signal, you're not going to hear it correctly, okay? So we take it a step further. Now we have XM, okay? So
Oh.
now we need a device that is capable of those higher, even higher frequencies. So there is an amplitude, meaning so much more ambient energies and frequencies that are being bombarded on the planet. This is having to do with the emissions of the sun, but it's also an inner energetic thing. Because the earth goes in cycles, it takes 26,000 years for the entire planet to do one wobble around, right? So it's one entire completion of a cycle. We have cycles within cycles. So as we're learning all of this, I know it sounds complicated. I'm going way out there.
No, no,
We're
no,
gonna
no.
bring it all
I love
back.
you explained it perfect. Like, wow, like what a eye-opening explanation for someone that wouldn't understand. Like, right, the AM, then FM, then XM. That makes perfect sense. So
So
yeah, go ahead,
we
go ahead.
we ourselves are like a radio. Like we are very sophisticated, the most sophisticated sensing device that exists. So we feel, now, granted, we may not feel like, I can't open my mouth and radio signals come out of my mouth, right? But we do sense and feel energies, vibrations, frequencies. We feel other people's vibrations. We can walk into a room and a person doesn't have to say anything, and we can get a sense of how they're feeling. We can ask somebody like, hey, are you okay? And they're like, yeah, I'm fine. I'm fine. Then they're saying that they're okay, but and sense and feel that deep down inside, they're not. We can feel it, right? So we humans have that extra sensory perception. We're not only empathic, which means that empathy means to be able to feel what another person feels, to empathize with them, but it's more than that. We can actually pick up on the signal that they're giving. Okay, no matter the space, the time, or the distance. I do this with my daughter all the time. We live at a
Mm,
distance, but I can feel her from the distance. It's like this telepathy. It that is real and that does exist. So we are now, all of us, humanity is now coming online. Now, I want to explore this a little bit more, and I may have mentioned this, that there was a time when, like the Tower of Babel, there's a story in the Bible about the Tower of Babel where everybody, after this cataclysm and the taking down of the tower, that no one could understand one another because then everyone was given different language. And what I feel that actually happened is that there was on the planet at one time an interconnectedness telepathically. Okay. That is coming back online.
mm,
So there are obelisks and pyramids all around the planet. Now, Tesla was very aware of electromagnetic energies and energy flows and the energy of the planet herself. Now, these are energy flows, energy systems. Animals are attuned to it. That's why we're talking animal medicine has information and guidance for us when we're attuned to nature. Nature is the most attuned to this naturally. We're the only ones who have been disconnected from it because we don't make effort to really understand and be in union, communion, in unity with our environment. So when we learn to do these things, then we come online. Now, we are now, I believe, in that process in humanity of this coming back online. So just like we were scrambling right before, we went live, to get our computers to connect, or I was anyway, computer to connect to the Ethernet, okay? That in order for me to connect with you from the distance, it requires it be plugged in so that there's a connection that has all these signals that are flowing. Now somebody can be watching us from another part of the world for all we know at this moment, and they're doing the exact same thing, connecting into an invisible grid of energy where all of this communication is happening. Well, this is like a man-made frame and that we do this, okay? But there's a natural system that does this automatically and so much more efficiently if we were to able to understand it. It's already in operation. So when we are, from the distance, feeling, people, that's how I'm able to connect and have readings with people around the world because it's really not a matter of space or time. Somehow, like we are also interconnected. And what I feel is coming back online, what I call the conscious net. It's like we are plugged in and infused into. So that's the term that I've been using. So just like the Ethernet, all of our individual devices, laptops, iPads, cell phones, those are devices that plug into a system, right?
mm.
We're people that are also devices that have extrasensory perception and the ability to sense and feel our environments ever so subtle. And we are being plugged into this internet, this consciousness that I call it, so that this is what's happening. And so what happened with this energy frequency, this time that's happening on the earth right now, it's a big change. I mean, we can feel it inside. Like we can feel that something's a little different. Like, I don't know about you, but have you been on your walks and noticed something different? You've taken the same walk every single day, for as long as you can remember, and all of a sudden there's a brand new building, that they're like has always been there, but you've never seen before, and you see it for the first time,
You know,
or a tree.
you know what's crazy? You brought that up in the last live, I think.
Mm.
And I saw this old video of mine, and I was talking, and you asked me that, and I was like, huh? I was thinking about it, and then I watched this old video of mine. I don't even know how many years old, and I was like, there's something different. Like, so I literally said that, like, there's things different. Man, I should have said, I don't even remember which video. I posted so many, but I was like, dude, you gotta be kidding me. So I guess I had been, but at the moment when you asked me on the last live, I didn't click, right? So I guess,
Mhm.
yeah, I gotta see what I was talking about. But but now I feel like you gave me a perfect opportunity to segue into the other thing. But let me tell you the last thing about the owls that I didn't even tell you about is
Mm.
that when I seen the owls, it was like then all of a sudden I saw them as these beings. So here they were, these baby little owls, and that's why, because I see them without judgment. See that even these three baby owls, where someone might be like, "Oh, these three baby owls," and then all of a sudden they appear to me as these like ancient beings, right? I saw them, and that's happened to me before when I'm seeing these animals, and then boom, I see them like it's almost like seeing a split screen, right? Right here, you could see them in this reality, and boom, on the other one, it's like this other dimension or something, right? And that's what made me dig deeper. Like, okay, well, what were they trying to tell me, right? Why? That's what made me, because I saw that. So if not, then yeah, maybe it would have just been like, okay, I get it. Maybe my psychic stuff's about to come. Oh, and even this yesterday, right? So the moth represents every time I've seen the moth the same. It's telling me my little spidey senses are about to come. All of a sudden, I was driving. I was actually on my way to a powwow that a friend told me last minute. I was like, okay, I'm gonna go. And then I went to see if I ran into people I knew, but there was actually no. It was weird because even that was new. I didn't see anybody that I knew, which was really strange. Um, so I don't think I had been to that powwow since before, the whole COVID thing. And then, so I'm on my way there, and I was even thinking like, am I supposed to be going here? And then a moth I don't even know where it came out of. There's a moth, and the moth always represents, because it's nocturnal and all this stuff. So I've made even a spirit animal video about the moth, right? The spiritual stuff. But
Mhm.
whenever the moth comes as well, it's like the spidey senses are coming back online. So the owl, I've been feeling this tug on this ear. What does that mean? Because if not, I have to look it up after.
Well, and it depends on the individual. And so this is one of the things. So what oftentimes a tug on the ear or ringing in the ear is trying to get your attention for a message.
Yeah,
Okay.
yeah. But right now I'm feeling it like a tug, tug,
Right,
tug.
right now in this
Yeah,
moment.
yeah. Yeah. Well, even when you were talking, it was happening and then it stopped. And then right now, when I was talking, it happened like a lot. So
Hmm.
I'm like, okay.
Okay. So this is
It's almost like you would
definitely.
want to hit somebody like, hey, man, leave my
Mhm,
freaking here alone.
mhm.
Like that. So what does that mean?
So it really depends. This is where it's like really trying to get your attention in this particular moment with what we're talking about. Now, you just mentioned, okay,
Going to the
about the
powwow.
the owls going to a powwow, okay, but is the owls what's coming up and what I'm sensing within this is that you said these as ancient beings, okay? Now, oftentimes, what ends up happening, and this is one of the reasons why sometimes owls are really strayed away from, misunderstood, because there is a tradition where they would even say that owls should be stayed away from because they are shapeshifters. Okay.
Mm.
So that also can be in some traditions. There is even one of the movies, I think it's called The Fifth Kind.
Ah, yeah. Yeah.
Okay.
I seen it. The fourth
Okay.
kind or the fifth kind? Yeah.
I think it's fourth kind. I think it's the
Okay.
fourth kind.
Okay. Yeah.
Okay. Yeah, so forgive me for the butchering of
No,
that
no,
one, but
no.
yeah, it's the same
Okay.
thing. And they had those owls in there that were literally beings, right? Just
Mm.
in that movie that they were actually, they happened to be, I know
Yeah.
we go that deep into this, but I think it's necessary to be able to talk about because here's the
And it
thing.
went away. See, now that it just went away. Like it was like pulling, 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 and then it went away.
Okay.
So they want us to talk about
Anything and
it.
everything that can exist does exist. And in that movie, The Fourth Kind, you can consider them ancient beings, but in that movie, it was like a screen imprint, but it was actually to cover up that they were being, abducted, alien contact with extraterrestrials. And I think that it's really difficult to even call them that. So we have to open up and expand our awareness that there is a lot of communication that is happening with other beings, interplanetary beings. They're even extraterrestrial, so cosmic beings. There's a lot of telepathy that is actually happening with individuals at this time with other benevolent, good beings that are in these other realms and dimensions wanting to exist and that are coexisting with us and wanting to assist us in helping us.
Mm.
So, like you just said that you had this imagery and that you've actually seen them as beings. It's these ancient ones, there's a lot of truth to be said in that. These experiences are happening to a lot of people on the planet, and that there are we may not even be aware of exactly, these other species that are coexistent with us. We know more about space than we know about our own ocean. And
Mm,
the thing is that our own human physical eyes is not even the full availability to us. There are animals who are capable of seeing much greater than we. Okay. So I've mentioned this before, but I mean, we would be remiss to not talk about it. Others can see an infrared, like butterflies see an ultraviolet. They're capable of seeing other spectrums, which means that they can see greater things that might be coexistent in our realities. If we
mm,
only see 6% of the entire energy spectrum out there, can you imagine how much more is out there that we are incapable of seeing with our physical eyes? So these are ways that nature, our own, I call them downloads. Oftentimes, when we're receiving this communication, inner communication, even from these higher beings to give us information, that's what channeling oftentimes is for people who have a religious bent, that, and which I have that background as well, that, this could be considered where many people are receiving messages like from the prophets. So
mm.
there's a lot that is actually happening at this time, and it really depends on each person's background, their perception, their awareness, but more often than not, their fear. Their fear will dictate where they will gravitate towards and what they will allow in or what they won't allow in, or what they'll entirely reject and say, like, oh, just stop talking crazy. Like, you're crazy, lady. Like, you don't even know
Mm.
what you're talking about, right? But there's so much more. What I mean is truly when I say anything and everything that can exist does exist. If one person is imagining it out there, they're not the only one. There are many others that are also thinking and feeling the exact same thing. Just because I have never seen it doesn't mean that it is not there. So there's no way on earth that not one singular person ever has a handle on what's happening. So this is why I love when I have sessions that there are so many things that are revealed to me through individuals in their sessions because they're asking questions that are so unique that I have never been asked, or I've never seen it from their perspective or from what's happening in their world, and so many things get answered. Like we live in a very mysterious universe, that
So
there's so much more than we can possibly imagine.
absolutely. Did you see anything then when I talked about that? Could you see the beings or
Oh yeah. See, now this is what's so cool is that everything I'm learning more, especially now, that people can really tap into their perceptions. Okay, what is their gift that is most primary? For some people, it's just an automatic feeling. It's a feeling. It's an automatic, just through their body, some sensations they just automatically know. For me, everything translates into an image. So
mm,
as you're talking, I can see the tree, I can see the eucalyptus, I can see the owls, I can see them like transforming into a being. I can see like the whole thing evolve and happen but it's all in my mind's eye. But that's a way mm, to tap into that. There's more of our invisible world than what is in the material world. Okay. There's more in the invisible world, the world of molecular, the world out there than what we can even begin to possibly imagine. So, this image in your mind, right? This ability to perceive, is working with you, giving you this message, guiding you to see the imagery you need to see in nature, and then also working with you to give you that. So did it feel like it was in your mind, or did you feel like it was with your physical eyes? Because
no,
for some people, it's a little bit of both.
no, I see it with it's almost like because someone asked me that last time. So it's just like it's almost like with these eyes, it's like your third eye, but yeah,
Yes.
but it's the same. Just like I'm seeing an image with this eye, all of a sudden an image appears in here. Just
Yes.
like when you dream and you wake up, and it's like, okay, the other day I had this dream that was, I mean, it was so detailed. It was like crazy. And an animal appeared again that I had never, I'm not a cat person. And there was this cat, and it had to do with those kind of cats are friendly. And then it's a masculine cat too, like usually. that color predominantly comes out as a male cat, right? And they're friendlier. So no, no, like don't take it like ladies don't take it away. According to this, like the male cat's friendlier. And it was like an orange cat. It was like an orange looking cat, you know? And I was like, that's so crazy. But I was at this keyboard, and I haven't felt like doing music or nothing in a while, but I was at this keyboard. I don't know, the thing was like 8 feet long, huge. And I was composing a symphony. And there was this old man next to me, and he was helping me. He was playing like the lower things, and I was playing the higher things. And we were putting it together. And his wife was across from him assisting us. And he like, I don't know what she did, and he like kind of like snapped at her real quick, and she laughed, and she's out. She's all we're and for some reason she told me that, well, we're 23 years age difference, right? And then she's like, we argue about once a week. And I was like, once a week? That's nothing. I was like, no wonder you guys have been together so long or something like
Mhm.
that, You're like, once a week. And then so later on that day when I woke up, and there was so many things to that thing. And then some lady that was Indian, like not Indian native, but Indian from India, she comes and sits next to me. So then I guess I realized we were in a studio, and then after she was talking to me, and then when I turned, the man was gone with the whole 8 foot keyboard. I was like, when did that like disappear? But he was helping me compose this symphony, which means like again, I related it to like new beginnings, but this was a crazy thing. So when I woke up, sure enough, it was like one of those telemarketers or spam things, but they asked me, the lady said, like, she was like, oh, we're 23 years age difference. And when I got the telemarketer, they asked me, are you at least 23 years of age? So I was like, wow, right away. So then it made me pay attention. Okay, all this dream, they always show me like that. When it's an important dream, something happens right away. And then the
Mhm.
rest is like it's coming, or there's other things I need to unpack. And there was a lot. I filled up a couple
Yes,
pages of my little
of a
dream
journal.
thing. Yeah, yeah.
Okay, so what you're describing there is that so you when our soul when we sleep, our soul is free to travel, to roam. Okay. So oftentimes our consciousness is in that other astral plane. Many times we're even in other worlds, other dimensions, other places. We're learning, we're actually communing, we're going through so much of experiences. Sometimes we're helping other people. Oftentimes I would imagine that this could even be perceived as going into this alternate realities, alternate timelines. So if we can imagine, again, anything and everything that can exist does exist. You're falling into a dream state. You have a dream that is so vivid that you're working with guides, they're giving you information, you're learning and composing a symphony, so you're getting inspiration. There's so much complexity that is happening in that one moment, when your body is at rest. So there's so much more that's actually happening, why sleep is so important. And that's also one of the reasons I hate to get so conspiracy, but like why there's a campaign for sleep disruption. So
Mm. Yeah, I
if
think
Mhm.
McDonald's was right. They were bragging about, oh, we is that what you're talking about? Like how they want to even market to us inside of our dreams and all that? Is that what you're referring to? Or you
Oh
knew
my
about that, right?
God.
Yeah, yeah, and
Okay,
they
so
bragged about
no,
it.
I don't know about this.
Yeah,
So
they bragged about it.
okay,
There's an
so this is
article.
literally was just trickling in through the ethers because one of the things is I'm really um disconnected from like a lot of I don't watch a lot of news and I don't watch a lot, any of that stuff. So I don't know a lot of what's happening in the world. Quick story, super funny. So when I was working, this guy comes in and he's like, oh, did you hear about that really horrible thing that's happening? And I'm like, oh my God, no, I didn't. So he comes in again the next day. Oh, then do you hear the news? And did you hear about this other thing happen? I'm like, oh, no, I didn't. So this, I was young. He's coming in and every day he's doing this thing. And I'm like, wow. And he's like, don't you watch the news? He's like, what kind of world do you live in? I'm like, well, my world is great, but yours sounds horrible.
I
Why would
love
I
that.
want to live in that
Eh,
world?
well, the same. Someone told me about that, so I didn't like. Someone told me about it, then I went and looked it up, and I was like, yeah, yeah. I'm the
But,
same way. I stay disconnected from like a lot of that
but
stuff.
I find it so profound that like without even realizing it, that this is coming up in the moment. So
Mm,
like so many times people will ask me like exactly what you just said, right? Are you referring to this specific thing? And I'd be like, oh gosh, no. But
mm,
this is what's coming in the moment. This is what's coming out that needs to be said. And then I get the validation. So
mm,
so much of what I experience in an inner world. So even though this is crazy, even though I don't watch the news, I don't, engage in those activities, I still have a very keen awareness of what is happening. And when I am guided to know something or do something, I am.
mm,
Okay. So, for example, I was supposed to have watched this video and there was instruction in there about, the collection of gathering roses. And like I hadn't had time to watch this particular video yet that had this particular instruction or this guidance in it, and it had this very specific thing about, going to gather roses. Well, I'm driving and all of a sudden my truck starts to shake and I pull off the highway and I get to this area and all of there's sudden there's like all these beautiful bushes of roses everywhere.
mm.
And I just happened to go to a store just 5 minutes before that and literally bought a brand new pair of scissors. And I thought, okay, now these would be good to have. I can always use an extra pair. So I happened to be in this place, happened to have a pair of scissors, and I, give an offering and I do the same thing as you. And I'm praying, and giving this offering to this beautiful bush and thanking it for this most beautiful flowers. And I collected all these, most beautiful roses.
Mm.
So I get to the place and they're like, oh, so, and I came ready, prepared with these roses in hand. And they're like, oh, good, you watched it. And I was like, no, I did not. So there was very specific instruction to collect these roses. When I went to this place in a gathering, I brought what I needed without even knowing that that was actually in the video. So again, like I really do deeply trust that whatever information needs to come through, that it does. And that we can be, no, now this is interesting too, that we can really create the world that we are meant to create. So I know this is going to get a little controversial, perhaps, but
Uh-oh.
yeah,
No, you're good.
maybe, maybe not. Who knows? But I think that it's super important because people may say that not engaging and not being aware of the affairs of the world is irresponsible, right?
Mm,
Now, because it's important to know what's happening out there. Yes, it's important to know. However, again, it goes back to kind of continuing our conversation. What am I going to do with that information? Like, is it helpful for me to engage in those ways, right? So then I can really make a choice in those moments of how can I best utilize my energy in this moment to make the best right choice. We are
mm,
being guided. We are being guided, and we have that ability within by how we feel. If we want to create something entirely different, a world that is new, a world that is cooperative, collaborative, filled with love, filled where it's more, where we're not out to get and not accumulate, but we're here. There's so much food available on the planet. There's so much money available on the planet that we have such discrepancies for some people living in such, I mean, substandard ways and others living like the 1% and absolute elite. I mean, there is plenty to go around for everyone. And if we're wanting to create an entire new world, right? This new earth, this new way of being, then we've got to be willing to create something entirely new. And that requires those few people that are entirely disconnected from the old. If they're still connected into the old, being informed by the old, and they say we have to know where we're going because we have to know where we've been, right? So it's enough to know that that was a lot of destruction, but I don't need to engage and put all of my attention into that. Because if
mm,
I put all of my attention into that, so the information informs me, right? There's destruction. We don't want to create that kind of a world again. So then we can have that information and completely disengage from it. So there's there is a level of a need to be aware of our fellow humans. I think that's what matters most, rather than the affairs of the world, okay, the problems, the politics truly, the stirrings of drama that causes people to disengage from their soul, you know? So that's why coming back to walking in nature, seeing animals, receiving information, getting the guidance, getting the message, so simple, you know, not having to receive it from a television and being told what to think and what to and yes, it's important to know what's happening, but more so to have that sense of humanity, that humanitarianism, you know, and how we're going to, I can't change anybody out there. All I can do is work on myself, right? And so I can make the decision in this one moment today. What am I going to do to help myself feel better? Not try to convince somebody else to do something that I think they should be doing. What am I actually going to be doing? Okay, that's the difference. Rather than trying to scream at others to force them to engage in a particular way that they should and they need to be aware of. Everybody needs to be aware of this, right? If everybody was to take personal responsibility, we wouldn't have these problems in the first place, Omar. That's the point. That's the whole point,
Yeah, yeah.
right? So, yeah, it's just a lot.
No,
That's a
no.
lot to be said about that. I can go into a lot more, but yeah.
Yeah. I mean, I could get controversial too, but I, I kind of was growing up already with that idea in my head, and I put it in songs and everything. That was my way to try to get the message out that it didn't make sense to me like that. I've always felt that the way that they used like Jesus was all part of a plan. Like, how was everyone okay with Jesus paid for my sins? Jesus paid for my sins. Talk about not having accountability. Like, as soon as you said Jesus paid for Jesus already paid for my sins, so it's cool. I could go do whatever I want, and then it's cool because Jesus already paid for my sins. You know what I mean? Instead of saying, well, that's why I gravitated towards the native way, right? Because the native way was like you're accountable, right? Just like that. When you take roses, you give an offering. When you take sage, you give an offering. Everything is like you don't never take more than what you need, and
Mhm.
you always give an offering, right? So it teaches you that balance, right? And then the other way, it was more about, wow, someone else already did it for me, so I don't need to do it. And it's fine. That's a beautiful thing. Exactly. But I think the message would get lost about, yeah, someone was willing to do that for you. So then imagine knowing someone did something for you. Shouldn't that make you want to like almost it was like the image of every time it was like being re-crucified for the things you're doing. Wow, he did it for me and he's doing it for me again and he did it for me again and he did it for me again. So how many times are you okay with him being, you know what I'm saying? I don't know. That was the idea I had as a kid. That's why I never liked or agreed with that. And they gave us the thing of like the Messiah was gonna come fix everything instead of us
Mhm.
rising to the occasion and being accountable. So that
Yeah.
was my thing. And no disrespect to anybody, but
Mhm.
as a kid, so this was me without being really influenced by other people's thoughts. You know what I mean? This was just me as a kid, just a kid on planet Earth, through walking right like that, just like me observing how I was observing this. This was my report, right? This was my like, oh, boom. This was my summary of what I saw as a kid before really being influenced by anyone, before anyone,
Yeah.
brainwashing me, so to speak. So
Well, and I think that goes back to, you know, that there are many people that are here to be these sages, they be these incredible, you know, people to help guide, to help teach, to help us understand what we're here to experience, you know, how to make best use of ourself. And I feel that there's a lot of misunderstanding, you know, and I feel that when it really boils down to that we are here to understand like the truth of ourselves, right? Of what that means to us, what that means to be human, to have all of our experiences, to have those challenges. And you're right, is that we learn through that firsthand experience, just like a child. You know, we don't learn by the parent saying, oh, don't go do that. You know, we learn by actually experiencing, by taking action, by learning those responsibilities. And I think that so much of our society today, you know, is bent on that, is that we don't want to have that suffering, you know, so that we don't want to take responsibility for things, you know, because that's the harder path to go. And so instead we, you know, put responsibility on others. And then we say, well, I would be so great if only they would do this. So again, it goes back to taking that personal responsibility. If everyone did, if everyone was able to hold themselves in such accountability for if they were totally responsible, that we would behave entirely different. The world would be an entirely different place. Even the simplest act of just throwing trash, you know?
Mm,
So the simplest act of throwing trash. I think that I did this one thing with our kids at one time of, the responsibility of that. Well, just throw it away. Well, where does it go? Well, it goes in the bag. Well, then where does the bag go?
mm,
Who takes the bag goes in the bin? Well, where does the bin go? Goes on the street. Well, who takes it from the bin, right? It's like this constant passing, 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 and they don't even realize that all of that trash ends up somewhere. There's
mm,
somebody managing all of that, right? And it's like just out of sight, out of mind. If they're like, oh yeah, I don't have to worry about that. I can just let go of that and not have any awareness of whatever happens after that, right? So if we have that responsibility of knowing that I'm responsible from here all the way to the end, but we don't. That was a weird example that came up. And
no,
I think
no.
that actually comes up in multiple ways too, not just for the physical trash, but the trash that people hold and that the trash that people pass on to others to carry. Here, I don't want this. Here, you take that. Okay, well, what do I do with it? Well, I'm going to take it here. So then nobody's responsible and nobody handles it. And it's just this big worldwide problem, right? So if every person takes responsibility, then the world would be different. We're not trying to pass it on. We're not trying to, but that comes again, physical trash, but then also the mental trash, the mental garbage, the things that we pass on to each other, even that behind the hidden screen, people can say like some really crude things that they take no responsibility for. Well, that goes somewhere. What we do matters. What we say matters. The things that we toss out matter. Like those go someplace. They don't just disappear just because they're out of your sight. It happens. It matters. So even to the what we think matters. It contributes worldwide. And that's why I'm talking about like the more and more people that are able to disconnect from what is and are really attuned to making something that they really want, that is creative, good, beautiful, kind, collaborative, all those things requires an entire set of people had to have a willingness to do that. And they serve the planet, so there are many I call them like soul groups, and so they have a soul mission. There's a infantries is what I call them. Like there's a soul infantry that their soul's purpose is just for destruction, to breaking systems down. There's other souls that are meant for there's an entire system that is actually out there. So when people are able to connect with what is most important to them, what do they want to contribute to the world, and it's really about knowing themselves. So where do people gravitate towards? Where do they find themselves really interested in? And then that's, well, they'll know more of what they're drawn to is an indicator of what their soul's purpose is. So yeah. That was an interesting segue.
No, no, you're good.
That's why I say these are conversations that kind of flow and go all over the place.
No, it reminded me years ago. I remember there was this person, they were just a complete stranger, but I had them like on social media, right? And I had a dream about them. And then like we were part of this group, and it was like that. Like we were like a little army or something. But I don't know. It was like we were planting trees. So
Oh, yeah.
obviously planting trees, yeah, to help things grow,
Mhm.
right?
Yeah.
And then there were all these things, and I told them, and like for example, I saw this tattoo on their back, so it verified. See, so all that was a spiritual thing, but showed me things that ended up being true, like to validate, right? Like
Mhm.
in the dream, I saw that this person had a tattoo. I was like, I saw like you had this tattoo on your back and this and that. And then they were like, I had a tattoo on my back and I got it. So I was even able to see that. Imagine they didn't even have, I don't think they had it anymore, or it had been covered up or something, like removed. But so I was able to see that at one point they
Mhm.
had it, even that. Like, so
Mhm.
it validated all that, right? So I was like, wow, what is this little army of, I think it was just showing me that, right? That there's people
Mhm.
on the planet that have that in the
Yeah,
spirit
they
world,
serve.
right?
Yeah.
Yeah,
In
yeah,
the spirit world, they come here for a very specific mission.
yeah,
Yeah, to help serve the world.
yeah,
And
yeah.
they're not even aware of it. A good
Oh,
majority of the people are just going about their daily business, just doing what they're supposed to do. I think that one of the biggest questions that I get from individuals is, I want to know what my soul's purpose is. I feel like I'm not doing what I'm supposed to be doing.
mm,
And oftentimes, when I meet with those individuals, I bring to their awareness that what's most important to them is that they feel good and that they are like connected with themselves. They do meditations. They really have done a lot of really deep inner personal healing work to where they feel better in the world. And I mean, that is a very highly evolved soul class where but they're like, but I'm not doing anything. And I'm like, oh my gosh, what they're doing in the privacy of their own space without ever having to talk to or communicate with another individual is that they are radiating out this energy, right? So
mm,
it goes back to that frequency we talked about before, that we are the most sophisticated device, that we are emitters of energy, but also receivers. Okay, that thing about receiving information, channeling, connecting with these interdimensional beings. That's receiving, sensing and feeling other people, being in their energy. That's a receiving. And then others, and we all radiate out. We all radiate. We all give a vibration. We have a frequency. We have a very specific feeling. We radiate that out into the world. And so, with this particular soul class, that even just in the privacy of themselves, going through their own inner healing and then praying, oh, that radiates and ripples out an enormous amount of light and energy into the world through this conscious net that I'm talking about. That one person doing that can offset, 10 negative people that are stewing,
mm,
that, and so it can begin to offset this energy so that the more and more people gravitate towards that. So our thoughts are not private. I've mentioned that before. We are all interconnected. We can feel and sense each other. We might not have the specific words, and some people have that ability, to hear it specifically in the mind, but it's more of a vibration. It's more of a feeling, a frequency that someone's giving off. So their vibe is very different when they're in a high state of agitation and anger versus in a calm, clear state, connected. We
mm,
all radiate out. And so, again, it goes back to that if every single person took responsibility for themselves, first and foremost, for their energy that they carry. Okay, people are walking around like walking, stinking garbage cans, like todo roñosos, okay? Like they're just like dirty because they're not cleaning their energy. So it's like I used to use the example of like having like a hot sudsy sink of water,
mm,
and everybody comes in and just cleans all their energy. If you've ever cleaned after a party and dishes galore, the sink water of dishes can become pretty disgusting, right? If we don't empty that out, we can and freshen up that clean, healthy water. Well, we do the same thing. We're around people all the time. We have our own thoughts in our own mind. And then so we radiate this energy. And then so we're constantly spewing and stewing. Okay. And so we begin, if we're not responsible for that energy, you've seen these people, their anger, they're enraged in traffic, there's just in a state, in a tizzy inside of themselves. That is a very irresponsible person for their energy. And not only that, that in this invisible realm, okay, that there are energy frequencies, energies, okay, that actually feed off of that kind of energy from people, okay? And so that's why it's like this emotional pollution, okay, that is emitted that creates a kind of emotional mental smog, okay, that this creates like a feeding frenzy for these darker energies and entities. And it's like they need a fix. And so oftentimes people don't feel comfortable when they're in a calm state. So then all of a sudden they feel agitated. That's why they used to show the angels and demons on the shoulder.
Mm,
It's like there are influences environmentally. And that's why, again, paying attention to what we watch and listen to is super important. What we even listen to with music. And that's why I love that you produce music, because that can be a very healing effect, but it also can have a very highly agitating effect. There's a lot that's happening in our music world where there it is like an inner programming there are some that can be used, like solfeggio frequencies and binaural beats and a couple of other things that are very calming to our system. But then there are also others that are highly agitating to our system, and we don't even understand it. It's all like
mm.
an energetic and a frequency thing. Like if we were to emit a particular frequency and sound in like a public space, it's mm, people can actually look this up, if they wanted to go into this deep dive, but like actual emissions of frequencies during big, massive events that have
Mm.
effect on the multitude of people that are there in at the event. You've heard of, what do they call it?
Mosh pits?
Mosh pits and, other stuff is that. Now, not mosh pits are bad, that's not to say what it is. It's that the frequencies that are emitted when people begin to stampede cause harm. There's
No.
that like, mosh pits are more of like where people are in unison, if you've ever noticed. Like people are in a unison in a frequency together.
Well,
And
yeah, I've known people that love to go and they're happy about it. They're like, well,
yes.
it's like releasing energy. They'll ram into each other and this and that, but they're happy about
Yes,
it.
because
So,
they're all in that like frequency,
yeah,
right?
yeah,
So
yeah.
that's not even, so it's not that. It's more of like I've heard of people going to concerts and like the music that's being played and frequencies that are subsonic, okay, meaning that it's either above or below the human hearing frequency range.
Mm.
This happens with elephants, by the way.
Oh,
Elephants
wow.
can emit a sound that is so subsonic that it actually travels for a mile within the earth to other herds, and it's just not within our hearing range. Same thing with animal dogs. They can hear far, far, far beyond our hearing range. So there are things in our environment that humans cannot perceive. Just because we cannot see them, just because we cannot hear them, does not mean that they aren't there. Many times we will feel them. Like the other day, I swear that I had this awful, horrible, ominous feeling of being watched.
Mm,
Now, it was a horrible feeling. Like and it was a couple of situations that were happening in that. The dog was actually behaving really strange too. Actually
mm,
woke me up right next to the bed, like almost like guarding me. That never,
mm.
ever, ever happens, right? And then having a nightmare through it. So like those are energetic things that we can feel. So in those moments, I wonder like who was out there who was like throwing shade. When we say
Oh,
we throw shade, it's
what?
felt.
What?
Like,
Oh, good.
go ahead.
I don't know why. That's funny because I was gonna wait to ask you that. Last night I felt a presence, and I don't know. It was I wasn't able to really understand, but I felt it just like how I felt right now, something tugging on me, which isn't an everyday thing. Yesterday I felt a presence, so I couldn't make if it. Do you get anything like if it was a negative presence or if it was because I felt it.
Like a negative thing, like
I
not
don't know
so
if it was.
good.
I just don't know. I don't know if it was negative or positive, but I felt it like touch me. In other words, it was weird.
Well, and because, we're embarking on this thinning of this veil, okay, that this time of like these energy, there's a less dense energy, which means that we can imagine like, okay, layers and layers and layers of like really sheer, um, material, almost see-through, like a net, okay? Like, if you know what I'm talking about, like material, but it's real
Yeah.
see-through, okay? If I stack enough of those together, I'm not going to be able to see through it, right? So we remove layers and layers and layers of this veil. It's thinning. So we're removing layers of energy, layers of density, layers of misunderstanding. So that going back at the very beginning of like where so many people around the planet felt like they went offline is because they were used to connecting to those frequencies from those realms with that thicker shield, that thicker veil. It's like we had an inner um, software system that was in operation, being able to connect and sense and feel in this whole world, right? Then something happened across the planet, worldwide, taking almost everyone offline, not able to connect, not able to feel. Why? Well, that's because there was this extra energies and frequencies, something different on the planet, a new emission. And so we're now going through an upgrade system within ourselves.
Hmm.
So like we ourselves, that again, that DNA that's now was dormant, now coming back online, but also parts of our brain. And then like they say, like the parts of our that don't they say, well, we only use 10%. Well, there's other, parts that are actually being able to come online. This energy systems, we are the physical device. We are learning how to mm, understand these frequencies, right? So going back to this thing of was it a good thing? Was it a bad thing? Well, I think with the thinning of these veils, we're beginning to feel and sense more. You are very attuned, individual, like you're coming into your abilities. Like all of us have these abilities, right? These intuitions, these intuitive abilities, but you're more highly attuned. You just are a mud. And so because you feel that way, and that's how your natural sense is, so it's like your spidey sense, right? It's like, ooh, there's something that's not quite right in the environment. So to me, it feels like I want to say it was a bad thing, a negative thing. I feel like it's something that's catching your attention, and I refrain from using the words bad because I'm trying not to be like, so when we judge things ourselves,
Hmm.
we sometimes miss the message. And
Hmm.
so when we can assume that it means one thing when there's another layer deeper, right? So pain is not a good thing. Nobody, all of us can agree that nobody likes pain. However, pain is very important. Pain actually shows us that we need to move, get away from what we're doing. It's causing harm. We put our hand over a fire, the pain makes us move the hand so that we don't cause damage. Pain pushes us emotionally to get away from what we're in if it's not good
Hmm.
for us, but it also pushes us towards our purpose. So to say that pain flat across the board is bad, right? Is not it would be an inaccurate thing. I guess it depends on the moment. So in this case, it would be like, what's it there for? What was happening in the moment?
I
What
didn't
was
I didn't
mm-hmm,
feel pain. I just felt it. So it was
uh-huh,
like why did I feel it? Like what did it want, in other words? Like
mm-hmm,
why did I feel it?
mm-hmm.
You see?
And so it would be like so I use pain as an example, right? But
No,
in
that's
this
a good
case,
example. Yeah, yeah,
yeah.
absolutely.
And in this case, it was like, something's different. Something's not quite right. Something feels like you're watching, right? Oftentimes, that's your inner guidance saying something's up. We feel it. We may not know where it's coming from. And you said it a moment ago. You had to cleanse energy from 99 interviews. That you take on energy, but you also give off energy, right? So we're doing this constantly. And this is why I say, coming back to energy management, when we energy hygiene, man,
Yeah, yeah.
energy hygiene. If people could learn how to be responsible for what they're thinking, because what they're thinking gives off a signal. And if they're not careful with what they're thinking, that signal can create havoc. It can cause harm in relationships, wreak havoc in their lives and in engagements. And then we again, like trash, here, I don't want this, you take it. And then we spew and stew our stuff onto everybody else. And before you know it, we're all in it. So that's why those people that are gems, that that have a smile in public, that you come across, that are like, oh wow, that was a good, kind person. And you can see this ripple effect, very specific souls, the microscopic activities. giving a smile, saying a thank you. Like those micro things are the biggest of things because they have big effects. That actually shows an undertone of the person's emotion,
Mm,
right? So if they are the simple smile being able to pass on is actually much, much deeper. That's just the tip of the iceberg. So if we are able, all of us, to understand, you know, we have energy we carry. Are we taking care of it? Am I holding myself in a way that is good for myself, first of all? And if not, what do I need to change for myself to feel better? And then how am I carrying myself in the world? Am I making it better or am I bringing it down? And so in these moments, when we do feel like mm, psychic attacks. Okay. So that could be one of those things that you actually were feeling. So if someone's throwing shade, if we're feeling something and someone pops into our mind and all of a sudden we feel something, again, our thoughts are not private. Like
mm.
we can feel this from the distance. And
You
so go ahead.
no, before this interview, that's the only thing. It's funny because last time I got this time, all I saw was someone. It was like I saw this like long-haired woman being sneaky, going into a room, but it was clear that she was being sneaky. So I didn't understand. I was like, what does
Mm.
that have? Like, why did I see that? Like, what did like you know what I
Well,
mean?
think
Like,
about the message.
yeah, yeah,
Okay, somebody being sneaky.
going
Okay,
into a
that
room, making
going
sure like,
into
yeah,
which
yeah.
shouldn't be there. So then we can look to this as to what is the underlying messages. Okay, so someone then your environment being sneaky, maybe going into a place that they actually should not go. So it's part of ourselves giving us the message, right? So we have to be skilled enough to, I call it, discernment, but also like we can get crazy in our heads with analyzing, and it's not analyzing. It's being open to the message, right? You were just aware. And so you're in a place of observing. This is what I love about, a good portion of living intuitively is also being an open state. I could ask something in this moment, right? And expect, and some people say, like, I don't get an answer. I don't get my answers from my guides because they don't hear the answer immediately. Well, most often than not, I don't get an immediate answer. I don't hear a voice in my head. I don't see it. So I have to relax into the moment and allow it to come, right? And so in this moment, you're like, that was weird. These two parts kind of stuck out. These are puzzle pieces. Okay, like I'm not sure what it was, but it's going to fit somewhere. And then sure enough, you'll probably have an event or a conversation that comes across and that will show you like, oh, that reminds me of my dream, or it reminds me of that experience I had. Oh, that's what it was trying to show me. There it is.
Yeah, no, it always happens. I was just
Mhm. Isn't that crazy?
yeah,
But
yeah, absolutely. No, I love it. I love the whole you know, the whole thing like that. Like I wanted to bring something up to that. That was gonna be how I started everything, right? When I was like, it's a little too heavy. So let's jump let's see if what your perception is about this. On the day of the eclipse, which is funny that maybe I didn't know about it yet, because again, someone told me about it. So when I interviewed you, I might have not even known about it yet. So on the last eclipse, on that day, there was a woman here, around here, this area in California, whatever. I guess she was a famous like astrologer, or she had a good following on social media. It came out on the news that day. So that she was like a teacher to so many people followed her, and she ended up stabbing her boyfriend or baby's dad to death. And I guess right before, she was all on that eclipse thing, because I saw that from different people, right? They were like, oh, the eclipse is gonna bring all this chaos and this and that. And I just wasn't getting that. So I did it. I was like, oh, I mean, different people had told me different things. I was like, well, I believe if you're feeling something, then yeah, maybe you should prepare, But for me, I wasn't getting it. So I was like, it's like, I'm just gonna see what happens, right? I felt like if something's supposed to happen, like they'll warn me, right?
Mhm.
So on that day, this woman, like, or she was already warning, like, I don't know what, and or to repent, or I don't know what, she was on all that, right? And then so I guess she ended up stabbing her. the baby's dad or something, or boyfriend to death. And then she had both of her kids, and I guess I don't know, she threw them out in the freeway, but one of the baby died, and then the other one, I guess, was hospitalized. And then she went, and I guess she smashed like at 100 miles an hour, and she ended up passing away too, you know? So when I see things like that, because I have came across that, right? It's almost like I've came across like the word I hear for it is like the unhealed healer, right? Like there's so many people that are teachers or healers and this and that seem like, you know, like they haven't fully. I mean, in this case, like, why do you think that happened to her, right? If she's this person that's out there saying she seemed very knowledgeable. I went back and tried to watch a few like things. She seemed like she was someone that was knowledgeable about every like astrology, this and that. I don't know if she did tarot readings too or what. I didn't
Mhm.
look that deep into it because after I was like, because I guess I just wanted like to meditate on it, like
How could it
what,
happen?
yeah, what affected her in that way. Like I get
Mhm.
it, but I would think that someone that was aware would have known, like, okay, let me take some time alone, let me this, let me that.
Mhm.
Like so for her to get triggered like that, because I know I've been triggered on a. There was a solar eclipse once, and I felt the energies, and I was like, I gotta go to nature. And even on my way there, it was crazy. This cop pulled me over, and I knew it was all a spiritual thing. I was like, why are you guys doing this to me?
Mm.
And I felt rage when the police officer pulled me over because he even comes to me and he's like, oh, like, where are you going? I was like, I'm going for a hike, whatever. And then he's like, oh, the reason you want to know the reason I stopped you? I was like, yeah, and then he's like, well, we're looking for a guy with a hat. And I was like, what? It wasn't even a car, just a guy with a hat. Like, he showed me this blurry picture on his phone of a guy with a hat. Like, how many hundreds or thousands of people have a hat? And it was just the craziest thing. I was like, are you kidding me? Like, so I started like getting agitated, angry, and then he got nervous. He's like, oh, have your hands on the steering wheel, this and that. And then he asked me for my stuff, and it was crazy because I opened my glove compartment, and these two things of like, wow, they weren't sage, but he thought they were sage. They were like a mug. You know what mugwort is? Like,
Mugwort.
yeah,
Mhm.
someone had gifted me that. So, but at the moment when he told me, I guess I thought it was sage because I didn't remember that I even had them in there. And then so he was like, instantly, he's like, when I was like, well, I need to get my thing, your registration, whatever. Okay, I need to get it. I'm gonna move my hands. He's like, okay, go ahead. And then when I opened it and the bundles fell out, oh, is that Sage? And I was like, yeah. And then instantly it de-escalated. He went from like up, 100 to like boom. And I was like, wow. So I got it. So I de-escalated because I saw it was a spiritual thing. I was like, oh wow. Okay. Like, but there was it was weird. Why, like, I didn't understand why that was happening on that day. I was already feeling all this energy. So I was like, okay, I gotta go be alone in nature for a few hours till this energy calms down. On my way there's the dumbest thing I ever heard in my life, right? We're stopping because we're looking for a guy with a hat. It was like,
Mhm.
did you, like, you're kidding me, right? Like, where's the script? Like, this is the stupidest thing I ever heard. And I snapped, and then it brought, so I don't know, it was weird. It was like it brought this piece, like, because he was telling me that, oh, I want, don't look at us like we're all bad. And I had such a long history of things with the police. And in that moment, it's like I let all that go. Something like it was meant to happen because now he was over here pleading with me like, "Oh, don't look at us like we're all bad," and it was just weird. It was so weird.
There you
Like,
go.
yeah, yeah. So yeah, in that instant, I was like,
So
okay, let me wipe. So all that to say, with this woman, like, why, like, what was she going through that made her stab someone? That made her like, throw her kids out a moving car, like all that, and then kill herself, right? Someone that was supposed to be aware spiritually. Why did all that happen?
well, and we can have knowledge. It goes back to that thing of knowledge versus wisdom, right? Is that to know a thing does not necessarily mean anything.
Hmm,
To know a thing does not necessarily mean anything.
hmm,
Know a thing doesn't translate into what to do with that, right? And so, and the hardest part is that the wounded healer, or and many times it's the unhealed healer,
hmm,
right? So people will embark on these journeys, because we all carry these deep wounding inside. And this is why I talk about that it's so important that every single one of us really understands about, energy hygiene, about emotional hygiene, just learning how to take care of ourselves. So To know a thing does not necessarily translate into the application of it. So many of us are going through so many things, but yet don't have, a full framework, a true unified, holistic framework for living. That we go through so much trials, and here's a big part of it is thinking that because people might have awareness of it, they might not know how to fully apply it or translate it. They might be even spiritually bent towards it because they might be actively going through something that is really, you know, difficult. And again, that thing of pain pushes us to purpose. Many times, people will not feel good emotionally, will have an emotional, a mental breakdown that will push them to begin to seek ways to feel better, to look for their healing, to look for a counselor, to look for different things to begin to help them. Now, we've all had a huge life experience, right? And many times people who are in this work have come from very, very broken backgrounds. And then they're probably drawn to this for that very reason. I have a very, very dear friend of mine who's a medical doctor. And he would tell me that many times that people who go into the field go into it and they really gravitate towards what their specialties are based on, what it is that they personally are going through,
Mm,
you know? And so we are all looking in some way to help heal ourselves. And so, and it could be that one of these moments just was so overwhelming. I feel like this poor woman, just like her soul snapped and broke, that we're carrying such heavy loads, that we're learning and trying to heal from really extreme experiences, and that we're also put under extraordinary amounts of duress. I mean, this world is really intense and crazy right now. And again, the powers that are all interconnected want it that way because again, we give off emotional and mental pollution
mm.
because it's a kind of energy that is sustainable for them. And them who? Okay, that's a whole other topic. There's another energy system on the planet in these invisible realms that really have, that's what the whole Matrix movie is about, right? Utilizing us as their power source.
Absolutely.
So when
Absolutely.
we, so oftentimes, the people that are wounded haven't had really learned, again, have a holistic framework for really managing all of those things that come up in life, just basic coping skills. And I think that's the most important thing that people who are searching and seeking, for um, intuitive work or like wanting to tap into their own gifts and abilities, that also having a very solid foundation for themselves as a person. Am I eating well, sleeping well? Am I just the basic human functions? Because this is again, our body is a device. We have to take care of it. And it is the container for our soul that is experiencing that when our bodies sleep, have dreams like you just explained. There's so much to us. So the psyche, it feels like it is very symbolic of what is happening on the planet is that I mean, I know there are times when I feel like so worn down, so exhausted. I know so many healers around the planet, they're like, I am done. They feel worn down, worn out, burnt out. And then with this taking down of the system, as I called it, this worldwide shutdown of this grid, like so many people are feeling like they don't have the energy to reconnect, to get back into this sense of connection. So, like, if everything went offline, a new vibration on the planet, we're having to increase our and recalibrate our physical bodies. So, taking better care of ourselves, learning there's a lot of energy emissions. So, having proper rest, hydration, and nutrition. The basic, most simplest things that we're not doing to be able to have productive spiritual lives. So that the engaging in just the spiritual activities alone is not enough.
Mm,
That we have to really have this holistic approach overall, and I think that that even can include, a healthy sense of, belief systems, communities, having not only a sense for ourselves, but also within our family. And that's what we're trying to do. So going back to so many of us are here wanting a whole new experience on the earth, that there's got to be so much of us that are willing to do it. But the ones that are here doing this work are a mixed bag, right? We have both. We carry a lot of pain because we've lived, and then we're also trying to emerge and go into this new energy. So it's a lot that's happening. And so it's okay, that everybody's experiencing this in some degree or another.
Mm.
And that if we understand this, then we can be supported through it, and not know and know that it is not, um, I want to say like a value statement about ourselves, meaning a sense of like a sense of worthiness. So many times people that I work with feel like connection and spirituality is like are they worthy of it? Are they good enough for it? And it's not about that. It's more of learning skill. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, yeah. No, no, because to me it's always been like I never felt like well, I don't know about never, but for me it was more like I didn't want like I was like, I don't want the responsibility, like let someone else have it because well,
Mm-hmm.
but it was more that I had more of a like I didn't see that humans cared enough for me to care. Like that's how I saw it. That was my beef. It was like people don't care, so why? Like, does anyone like
Does
really
anybody care?
want the world to change? Like, does anyone really like, you know what I mean? That's what I saw growing up. So I was like, why am I? And even that, the story of Jesus, why sacrifice yourself for people that don't really even like it's like that. Like that's what I got from like like Jesus. Like look what
Mm-hmm.
they did kind of thing. That was
Yeah.
that was like so growing up I was like so that's why even that I suppressed whatever spiritual things I had, or not suppressed them. I just was like, nah, I don't want the responsibility. Like,
Mm-hmm.
yeah.
Yeah.
So that was my beef.
And I feel like a good majority of my experience was probably the same. And I feel like I was, yeah, resisting it quite a bit. And I think I know that's why I ended up having that NDE. I was going in a different
Mm.
direction and it was like a course correction. Yeah, because of that. And so many people, souls that have incarnated on the planet, have experienced exactly that. This feeling of like, what is it even all about? Is it even matter? Is it even worth it? And then we actually boil down to and recognize like, oh yeah, there's a switching moment, right? So you probably can recognize that moment of when it might have like switched over and is like, okay,
What?
well, I'm done of carrying everybody else out there, so it feels good to me. So when like you somehow it switched and it clicked like inside of you, where it was like, well, and I guess this is the thing is like, well, I can't change and do anything out there. So, and it's going to sound strange. And I don't mean this disrespectfully in any way, but it's more we have to get to the point of like, well, forget everybody out there. Worry about yourself. Right. So when we forget about everybody out there and then we only worry about ourselves and then we begin to hold ourselves in a whole different way. Because here's the thing, forgetting about everybody out there also means that we stop blaming others for our stuff.
Mm.
Oof. Okay. That makes taking full responsibility for everything. So that, yeah, that I am responsible, even to the fact of I am responsible for making sure that I feel good. It is my responsibility. I have a responsibility to others to make sure that I do my work, right? I have a responsibility to not only myself, because to help myself feel better, but yeah, I have a responsibility to others that I'm not spreading. Okay, so we spread poison, emotional, mental poison, without a blink of an eye, without even second guessing, without even realizing what we're even doing. But if we actually were to stop and realize, okay, what am I feeling? How do I feel inside in this moment? And how is that being transferred or conveyed to other people? When we do that, we can behave really differently. And then the whole world, then we begin to have full control, right? Self-control allows us to be able to have full control. meaning that we have the ability to open up and understand our environments and take care of ourselves, knowing who we allow in our environments, and then really actually have the ability to create the change we really want. Yeah, that's a lot of philosophical stuff, and there's a lot of steps in there, but it really just boils down to there's nothing more important than feeling good. Okay. We were told that that was really selfish. Yes, of course, people can be selfish without consideration of others. However, it's also important that we take care of ourselves, that we take care of our needs, that we make sure that we are happy, healthy people, and that those needs are being met. And that if we could do that for ourselves, then we don't have to put that responsibility on somebody else that can free them up to living responsibly, that they're not responsible for anybody else other than taking care of themselves. There are other planetary systems out in the universe that would never even consider a fraction, even thinking a fraction of what us humans do, because they understand that anything that I do to you, I'm essentially doing to myself, right? So I won't want to cause harm to myself. So why would I even consider causing harm to somebody else? Because that's where they really truly understand that unity, that oneness, that consciousness, that interconnectedness, that we are not separate. Yeah, we're getting there. We are in the infancy
Infancy.
stage as a soul evolution, but we're getting there. And that's why all of the eyes in the universe are on this planet. How is it that we are going to evolve as souls on this planet? Are we going to get caught up in the day-to-day stuff, the nitty-gritty, you know, or are we going to actually allow ourselves to move beyond the discomforts of the day and to move into like soul connection? We're meant to be this soul, awakened, spirit, connected, fused being. It's a new species. It's a new way of being on the planet. So I think that I'm that was a tough subject to bring up about what happened with, the astrologer in the family, but I think it's also very important to bring up too that, how important it is that knowledge translates to wisdom and that we take care of ourselves, do the deep work to heal ourselves. So she might have been on embarking in a way in all those attempts to try to find a way for understanding for herself to be able to heal and probably never fully finding that thing that could give her that peace inside.
Well, because at the same time too, like I feel like that's the thing is, see, and that's one of the places I'm at right now is that I wouldn't want to be so focused on making my because it never has been to this point, even starting the podcast, right? Like I never started it to like, oh, as a business, right? I started it as, okay, let me start this way of giving people knowledge, right? So for me, it's like, I guess in that, like, maybe she got so caught up in the, because she had a huge platform. I think she had over 100,000 people, this and that and this. So I'm
Mhm.
sure she was making money off of it. And then at some point where it becomes more about the business than it does about that, right? Making sure your energy is good, making sure and then when someone's just like, let me post content, or even that to get stuck in the doomsday of because there really isn't nothing that I get doomsday about. Like there is nothing, like all that stuff is non-existent to me. So even like like there's so many like spiritual people I know that will get swallowed into that rabbit hole of things, right?
Mhm.
Like of the doomsday thing of like just that, right? If anything that, and so to me that's non-existent. It doesn't, not that it doesn't matter, but it doesn't matter in the great scheme of things. You know what I mean?
Yeah. And it goes back to that thing again that you were saying is that in order for us to create a new world, it requires enough of us to disconnect from that. So if doomsday thinking is going to create doomsday, okay? So we cannot have both doomsday in our mind while thinking of a new earth, a good earth, a planet of goodness, truth, beauty, kindness, connection, okay? The golden age, okay? So we can't be thinking doomsday, feeling doomsday, talking about doomsday, spreading doomsday, while also saying we're creating a new earth because we're creating the new earth from the old. Okay, we're just going to create more of the old. So it
Mm,
requires those enough that are willing to entirely disconnect from the old and entire, like you said, that for me, that's non-existent, right? I'm glad that you said that, that it's okay to say that we are aware of what is happening in the world, but yet what is my choosing to connect with it in this place going to do from this place? Like that is it is not happening in my current existent reality. I don't live in that space. I understand what is happening, and it is those of us that can send energy, right? So if we want a different reality, has to be enough of us that are not living in a warlike environment to be able to have this transition and this change. Those that aren't thinking of that, it's not part of their language, it's not part of their existence, it's not part of their being, because, and then it will not exist in that world, and it doesn't exist in theirs. That doesn't mean that they're irresponsible for what's happening on the other side of the planet. They didn't create it. They're not responsible for stopping it either. Those are energies that are happening, with those that are engaged with it. If we choose to engage with it, we're now in it. Okay. So, in order to create a new earth, a new reality, it requires enough to not engage with it, to be willing to into something entirely different. If enough of us are infused in that new world, that new way of thinking, then those things will not exist because the ones that are living in that world are not engaged in it. Therefore, it does not exist. Does that make sense? I pray that
no,
that
no,
makes
yeah.
sense.
Like for like you made me think of why because I was shown that, right? Like how I pretty much designed this experience for myself, right? I was shown that. Not pretty much. I gotta stop saying that. I was shown how I designed my life. Bam, straight up,
Yeah,
right? Like
straight up.
yeah, like I,
You
I
designed
designed,
it.
yeah, and I'm constantly reminded of it, like
Mhm.
constantly. And so I was able to, like, even that, right? When we were little, like we grew up in a rough environment, but separate from friends I had, just that, right? Like all my family was in Mexico, so us going to Mexico and like for example, in Mexico, I remember we would drive, right? It was an over 24-hour drive. My dad would take us, and on the way over there, even it was like a whole different world, right? Just from the US, right? Like as soon as you cross, like I remember not seeing, I think there was like one piece of graffiti on the whole route. Like once you go into Mexico, right? Everything was just beautiful, right? Everything was green, beautiful, this and that. And over the years, yeah, you saw it progressively get worse and worse and worse, right? Like they were with the TV, right? With the TV, the internet, they were able to like see everything. Oh, the US is doing this stuff. Oh, we want gangs too. Oh, we want graffiti too. Oh, we want drugs too. All this stuff that they were getting all the, unfortunately, right? But when I was little, so I saw this different thing from the hood that we grew up in with gangs, and I found like my first dead body like in second, third grade or something, like, you know what I mean? Yeah.
Yeah,
So it was like you're seeing all this stuff, and it's like, I remember my dad used to get mad because I would be like, "Why did you bring us here? Like if we were, why didn't you?" And he would get mad, like, like because I guess that we don't understand we're little, or the economic situation, right? Like
right.
it's about, yeah, the search for a better life and economics wise, right? But there was at least enough of that he would take us to different places, or he put us in the Boy Scouts to go see, go on this, and then they show you waterfalls and this and that, right? Where all my other friends, they didn't, like my best friend, his house was like the worst house in the whole neighborhood. It was like there was no father figure. Like he had these sisters, and it was like each of them, like one of them was like with a hardcore like drug addict, another one was like with a guy that was like one of the heads from a gang. And so there was all these like things. I would go over there and I'd see like this like dysfunctional to the max. And then in my house it was like my parents were, we were in that environment, but they were both, I had both parents, right?
Hmm.
So it let me know that there was something just from the places we would go. I
Mm-hmm.
had that right. You could be in the same environment, right? Like my friend, my best friend, he ended up as soon as we moved away. Like when I was in junior high, when I went back to visit, he had already got in the gang, or there was like someone moved in like next door to where I lived, and then my friend got in the gang. I went back another time. I think he was doing like 8 years in prison. So this was my best friend, and imagine the two separate from us moving in that time. But I understood that, right? Same environment. It's just I had these little things that let
Mm-hmm.
me see, oh, there's this whole other world. Like a lot of gang members, they stay, oh, it's about the block, right? This is my life, right? This hood, this is that, and even that made me like, why would I want to be in a gang where you can't even go to the next neighborhood? Because, that's enemy territory and this and that. So I was around enough gangbangers to get that sense, right? Like, this doesn't make sense, right? All that to say, like, I seen all the stuff, so I can go at any moment, right? I could go around the bad stuff, like right, or what we not bad, but rough environments. Let's call it that, right? Because it's not like they chose, like, oh, you know. So to see that there was I don't know where I was going with it. I know there was a point, but it like I guess I
Mm-hmm.
dragged it out so long that I got winded on my thought. But just to say, like, I see why I did that for myself, right? To see like
Like how
the
we create our environments. And here's the thing that you pegged it, you pegged it, is that goes back to we have our life experience, and we have all like and even if you're brought up in the same neighborhood, two entirely different experiences, outcomes, right?
yeah.
Now, and the craziest thing is that even within the same families, like I can recognize even within my own family of like my older brother, who is now crossed, God bless him.
Mm.
But I can see where like he was born with the imprint, each of us were born with the imprint of our parents at the time of our birth. So
Mm.
like my brother was really into, like la cultura and like music and culture and activism, and like he had a lot of influence in that. I was born into a time when my parents were exploring spirituality, and a lot of mysticism, and my dad, he had his spiritual mentors. Like we have a Sikh community here in New Mexico, with there's a ashram of Guru Ramdas.
Mm.
My dad was, like, and my mom were really engaged, so I was born into like a spiritual era. And my younger brother Miguel was born more into like this, um like he was actually more into this activism. My brother was more in Sebastian was more into culture. And so then so every single one of us was born into a different imprint, right? So even within the same families can also have just a slightly different outcome because of the energy they carry. And so it goes to the very, very fact that our souls wrote this. We chose our families, we chose the experiences, we said how we were going to live, what the experiences we were going to have, the imprints we were going to carry, what we came to accomplish, and those experiences are written into the very framework of our life. So yeah, like and those things of our family of origin and the location of our birth are the first imprints that create us as people, and that distinguishes us from somebody else, right? Two kids growing up next door, same neighborhood, totally different outcomes, right? So we're the outcome of our experiences. We're the outcome of our environments. And so like not 100%, but a good majority of it. And we chose this, right? So our soul chose our parents. It chose the location we were going to live. It chose the time that we were going to be born into. Now, coming back to astrology is like, in those moments, it's like an imprint on the moment and the time of our birth,
Mm.
right? So it's like, in order for us to have these experiences, it's like we have these cosmic codes written into our lives, that really, really, and we can have a whole conversation on astrology, actually, which is really fascinating, by the way. Maybe that's something that we can actually explore, truly, because it really is like people say that we're not born with a manual, but I beg to differ, you
No,
know.
yeah.
Mm-hmm.
I would say we do have now in hindsight. Yeah, yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
Absolutely. I mean, even that, right? Like, I got like, I guess that was the point I was trying to make. Yeah, just because I was shown a little light that there was something better. That's why I always strive for. I knew that
Mhm.
that wasn't. Whenever I went a little too much, like, I was starting to go too much that way. It was like, I know there's something. You know what I mean? Like,
Mhm.
yeah,
Like an inner guiding voice, an inner guiding like a something, right?
yeah, yeah.
Something guiding you, something keeping you tethered. It's like yeah, and the even as children, those experiences are interlaced and woven into our lives, and that truly like how we perceive the world is really every single one of us is walking around with our own developed lens. It's a filter with which we see the world. And everyone has it. It's a filter. We actually filter out parts of information that we cannot accept. There's so much of the reality that's filtered out based on like a certain frequency that we have. And so it's really fascinating. All of that really does matter. We are born with a very specific frequency, a very specific energy makeup, a very specific set of circumstances. And then our filter is created based on what we experience. And so is our belief system. So we walk around, half of us not really being able to see the full thing because we've created a lens that kind of blocks our perception. So when we say that, do people have an open mind? Is it really that their perceptions and what they've built in their lives going to allow them to experience something new, something different, something that might be out of the norm for them, but like always pushing to think something better, you know?
Absolutely. No, it's crazy because right now, see, everything like it always comes out after. Like when you were doing that thing, that's exactly how the mama owl was when she was in the
Mm.
eucalyptus.
Wow.
Yeah, yeah. So it always one way. No, because I'm telling you, like the animals give me whole
Uh-huh.
stories. Oh yeah, I was gonna mention that in the beginning, right? Not to take away from like what everything you were
Mhm.
just saying. Thank you for that. It was amazing
Mhm.
explanation. Like anyone that no, but like that's what when the animals first started coming to me, I got it right away. It was because they have no ego when they convey the message. It's just like bam. It's not like a person like us. We can be trying to read for somebody and be like, well, I'm feeling this or I'm feeling that. I mean, until we learn, right? Once we learn, then we can just spit it out like, well, this, that's what I'm getting. But the animals from day one, they're like, this is the message I'm bringing you. There's no ego. The animal means this, whether it's through actions or you just already learn what the symbolism is with
Mhm.
that animal. Um, then that's it. That's the message. It's
And
no
see,
sugar coating,
yeah.
no this, no, yeah,
And I
yeah.
think for people watching is like coming back full circle, like, and this would probably be a really, really good way to bring it full circle, is that we started talking about, the animals and the animal medicine. And so the messages that they carry. So somebody would be like, well, what do you mean that the animals carry a message? So whenever we come across like any particular animals, whether it be a bird, an insect, a little creepy crawler, a creature, whatever it may be, they have there's a reason that they have come upon our path for us to even see them or observe them. So there have been golden eagles that have been flying over the place that I'm staying recently, and they're spectacular. So the Sandia Mountains there in Albuquerque. So these most incredible, and it's always and in at times that I'm talking like really deep spiritual stuff, and all of a sudden these golden eagles will appear and they this glide, ever so gently, but they are powerful, powerful
Mm,
creatures. And then so the symbology of, the eagle is always being able to, have higher sight. So having that perspective, the eagle vision, meaning that we're not in the muck of it, that we're actually able to see the higher perspective. So there's a lot of, if we really think about what are the qualities that the animal carries, what does it do in nature, and what is it there to show me? Then we can reflect back on our personal experience and apply what we're seeing, thinking, feeling, or even look up, okay?
yeah, yeah.
Eagle medicine, or what is an eagle animal meaning? so that actually can happen a lot. So, that any creatures that come regularly on our path or something that really catches our attention has a message there that the soul can receive. And so it's all an intricate system. And nature is one of the most vital, I mean, it is nature. I'll just put it that way. We have to plug into nature because it is natural for us to be attuned without ego, connected into these cycles to sense and feel and see and be guided in our environment daily, not these like and it begins to be a practice. So like start small, make a choice to go out and take a walk, for those that are watching, and just start small and just say like, I wonder what animal I'm going to see today. And if an animal does happen to come across your path, maybe look it up and kind of think and ponder like, how does that apply to what you're experiencing?
Yeah.
So there's so much knowledge, and that can be gained. So it's getting that information, knowledge, and then transferring it into how do I apply it into how I'm living, which is wisdom. That's a very different thing. So learning how to be in our environments, being observant, and that's the most important thing is we have to learn how to be the observer. Because if we
Ah,
don't learn how to observe, we miss it all. This is all happening around us all the time. Messages, signs, guidance, wonders. There's even a passage in the Bible that says that if you, unless you are able to see signs and wonders, you will never see, you know?
mm.
So yeah, we have to open up ourselves into being able to see. And it's a different kind of seeing. It's
Yeah,
a
yeah,
feeling. Yeah. Seeing,
absolutely.
sensing, feeling, who knows?
It's funny because speaking of seeing, like this time, just right now, like it stood out, like the arch over
Hmm.
like behind your head. Yeah, it
Hmm.
looks no, it looked yeah, yeah, but I wasn't even see because you hadn't moved like during the whole thing, so I hadn't even paid attention to the portal. It was more like the arch over it looks like a native headpiece. So it
Oh
looked like
yeah.
'cause when you lean forward, yeah, it looks
Oh
like a
yeah.
whole yeah,
Like a
yeah.
headdress. Yeah,
Yeah,
I
yeah,
can see that
exactly.
actually.
Yeah, yeah. So I was like, oh, that's funny. And it's funny because it ties into that, right? Yesterday I went to the power, so I was seeing all that. And then it kind of reminds me a little bit of the colors of the peak. So the peacock came out a lot too, because that's been to the place I went, there was just a lot of peacocks. One even did its little dance, which I never do. Like I actually turned off the camera because I was like, man, I didn't want the battery because it was dancing for like 20 minutes. I've never like they'll dance for a couple minutes and boom, 2, 3 minutes. But this one was like had its little thing dancing for like so I was like, all right, like
Are you done yet? Are you done
yeah,
yet?
yeah. I was like, and then I started recording again, and it was just it was interesting. But that's all about like, there's a lot of things with that, right? Like the peacock, right? Displaying its feathers, right? Also, it's like one of the few birds that kill snakes. So it's like it's protected. It's almost like it was giving me that message, like, hey, which is funny because I feel more an energy of going like even after seeing the owls, I feel like being a student right now. Like I want to take time. Before that's all I was about, like just learn, 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 learn. And that was all thanks to a vision I had of someone showing me they were already in the spirit world and they were showing me like, damn, I wasted time when I was there, and they were showing me like, so I
Hmm.
woke up and instantly, right? Like if I had a little bit of money left, every weekend, boom, I'd go to Barnes and Nobles, go to the clearance section, buy books, buy books, buy books, get audio books. And back then audiobooks were on CDs, so I used to get the CDs, burn them, and then put them on an MP3 player. So even if I was working, I was listening to audiobooks before even Audible, I think, was out or whatever. So I
Hmm.
already was listening to audiobooks. Like I would make my own from these CDs and then just put them on my MP3 player. So, it was all about knowledge. But even with that, with the owls and these beings that appeared, like I feel like that, like I'm entering into another journey of learning.
Hmm.
So, I don't know, like, but the peacock, that's I'm bringing to say the peacock is all about displaying and being out there and hey, you're good, you're protected. But it's weird that I'm kind of drawn more to the other energy of like learning.
Yeah. Well, that's where you're most comfortable. And in this lifetime, you're actually here to convey, okay, what you learn.
Hmm.
So for you, you got both of the energies. So you got the owl, which is all the introspection, um, protection in the astral planes, like spirit protected in those realms, and with seeing those ancient ones. But then also the peacock is about, yeah, displaying, showing your stuff, being out, being present, being seen. Okay, so it's really the peacock is about, so the two energies together is that you are here to be that you are a perpetual learner, but you also are here to convey and display what you learn.
Hmm.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Well,
Yeah.
we'll see. But I like the
You're doing
peacock.
it. That's the
Yeah.
thing.
But
You're Ahmad, you're doing it because
no,
you're like you have these very, very deep inner spiritual things where you're learning, growing. But then you have a podcast when you bring us on and you're sharing what you're learning, you're doing your videos of the things that you come across. So you're displaying your learning. Mm-hmm.
but even right now, right? Like I felt like I'm willing to do like these lives and everything. But even that, like I have a list right now. Imagine like at one point to like really be trying to get people to come on the podcast. Right now I have a list of like probably over 40 people that I have an email of people that want to come on the podcast. But um, I felt like that, like tap like that like
Mm-hmm.
these being because I don't know what it feels like almost like that. You almost feel like they're calling you to not that they were telling me come with them, but it was almost like come with them, but not like literally like go, 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 but like come with them to see what they want to show me. You know what I mean? So that's
Yes.
kind of what.
Yeah, and see, because a lot of our learning is in that astral plane. Again, that thinning of the veil, right? And so like so many people on the planet are being reached out to that are meant to serve in this way. You're one of them. So part of that soul's purpose was to come to this earth, and then they're like, yeah, come with us. It's more of like an invitation to work cooperatively with us. Okay,
Mm,
because there are beings like that are perceptible, okay, can be felt, can be seen in the inner eye, third eye, right? Can be have imagery of, can have a sense of, but it's happening. It's happening on the planet more and more. And more people are being contacted, having these connections, having these communications, being able to be reached out and are embarking on, the creation of this new earth. That's just a fact. That's part of why we're here. And that can only happen by souls who choose it. And the souls who have chosen it are typically beings that have come from, the planet with these high soul missions and these purposes that we want to be able to create. And so we're here to work cooperatively together. Yeah, to be able to create these changes. And you're absolutely correct. Is that like you're being called, you can feel it, you can sense it. It's something that's written. And I'd venture to say that there's many, many, many more people that may not even be aware that it's happening too, because it sounds like, feels like, it's like an inner world. It's like all in the privacy of our own mind. So if people have enough curiosity to engage with it, to really get a sense of their inner self, because that's where we really are meant to connect, with this deep, rich inner world, and then being able to get all that we have here inside and to be able to bring it out into the world. So when people are not connected to themselves, they have no ability to bring the gift that they were meant to bring. So we're meant to connect with ourselves in these ways, and nature and animals and all of these things that we're talking about is part of that. We're meant to be here to create that new world, and we're doing it little by little. And
yeah,
it's slow in the making, but we're getting there.
yeah,
Thank you,
absolutely.
Ahmad.
No, no, thank you. It wasn't,
Yeah.
it's an honor. It didn't look like anyone wanted to ask any questions today, so you know,
Okay.
but it's
Well,
all good. No, I enjoyed the conversation a lot. Um, so thank you. I'm
you're very
honored as
welcome.
always.
Well, we
So
can.
I'm gonna
Mhm.
hit stop right there. hold on one second, and then thank you to anybody that did tune in. I guess no one had questions, but thank you so much to everybody that watched. And as
Thank you,
always, it's
thank
an
you.
honor, yeah, to be in the same space with Maria, who's so full of wisdom and sabiduría and all that good stuff. So
Mhm.
thank
Thank you, thank you. Thank you so much. I enjoy it. I just enjoy having conversations, talking about anything and everything that just comes up. So
you.
yeah, it's important. Yeah.
Absolutely, absolutely. Okay, so bye to everybody, and hold on one second. Okay, so
Okay.
oh wait, am I supposed to end it for the